blast off. So we'll open the meeting. We have a motion for remote.
I'll second it.
I'll make a motion to remote.
Okay, Jessica made a motion, seconded by Nate, to go remote. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, I have
Aye.
the roll call. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian? Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried unanimously. Okay, we'll open the meeting. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes? And if not, don't worry about it. We can defer the minutes. They were sent out last week, the minutes of March 11th, I believe, or March 4th, whatever it was. If no one has really either had a chance to read it or has any comments, and we don't have a motion, we will defer voting on the minutes. Okay, hearing nothing and not being able to see people, we're going to defer the minutes and move to the rest of the agenda. So we'll start with the votes to consider the capital budget committee capital budget vote. Okay, and you were probably looking at it on a computer. I got it on my phone. So
It's an article, right, Ken?
yeah, it should be in the it's in the warrant.
Yeah.
It's Article
What article?
Number 8,
8.
Number 8. We have a page.
page 12.
12.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
I have a question regarding the taser replacement.
Okay.
Was that the final number to replace all of them, or was that half? What did we end up coming up with for that?
If Robert doesn't mind being put on the spot, I'll defer to him. He was pretty involved in that. Robert, do you know?
My understanding is that's the first payment. The other one's dropped. There's a total of 3.
And there was a total reduction, I think, Robert. Is that not correct? The number?
Did he drop a couple off the end? He was gone. I don't know if he did or didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin was working on taking a few of them off and working somehow with the stairs. I actually noticed during the parade that the detailed officers from Dennis don't carry tasers at all. So
that's the number is 27,960.
and then it drops to the next 2 years to smaller numbers, a little bit less, like 2,000, I think, the next 2 payments.
Does that answer your question, Jessica?
So they are doing the installments rather than replacing all of them at once?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. No, this is a payment plan that gets them all what they need right away. They get them, they pay for it over 3 years.
Right, they're like it's like they're paying it over time.
Right.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So
It's not that
are getting
they're going
all
to get a
of the
third. They're going to get
tasers at
everything they need day one. But it's going to be 3 payments that'll be marked
Okay.
in the capital budget for the next 2 years.
Okay.
once. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
So what we have in front of us is a capital budget of, from the levy, $1,502,105. I believe we can vote this in total. From the recycling fund, $93,000. Golf retained earnings, $50,000, and then the receipts from the fire department, $495,000, for a grand total article of $3,672,661. Any questions and/or a motion to accept or amend or reject the capital budget for 21?
I'll move to accept.
Is that Jack?
Yeah. I'll second that. Yep.
Was that Nate?
No, Brian.
Brian, sorry, Brian.
That's all right.
Any discussion? Okay.
Can I have a quick comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I said it to Dan and Rich, but I think the boiler is not actually a boiler at the whole school. It's a burner.
Burner?
Doesn't change the amounts or anything else. I think we're just describing the wrong piece of equipment.
Okay, we'll make sure we get that through Dan to the committee.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. We'll take a vote. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Now, let's see, hopefully, I don't know if the warrant goes in. Let's see, what free cash. I'm following the agenda. I may not be following the warrant order.
Should be number 10.
Article 10. Free cash total. And take a couple seconds. I don't want to rush anything here. Take a few minutes to look at the free cash allocations. They have changed since the last time we talked about them. And one of the reasons that they appear to have changed was the intention of recognizing the current situation we're in and setting aside some future free cash, which is legal, for potential future needs. So the free cash article, if I'm missing something here, is $1,595,000.
Yeah. That includes the FEMA account that would pay for the new roof at the BSU MacArthur School and insulation in the attic here at Town Hall.
Okay. And that is, again, this is actually the first time I've had a chance to look at some of this stuff too. So I guess thinking out loud, that is a substantial reduction from what we had before. We had a free cash of close to $3.5 million. That is now $1.6 million.
Yeah, so if Rich is on the call, we came up with a plan with the board the last meeting back in early March. I think there's a form that you should have sent around to you that talked about some of the things that we reduced in preparation if we have some unanticipated expenditures needed associated with this event that we're in right now.
Yeah, no, this is Rich. Bienvenue. So the changes from what you last discussed was the local comprehensive plan development was cut in half from 120 to 60,000. Capital stabilization of 250 was eliminated. PD shooting trailer of 200 was eliminated. And for this article, the prior item we discussed regarding wastewater capital reserve for $500,000 was eliminated. However, there is another article on the Water Infrastructure Fund investment adoption, which is Article 15.
Okay.
That appropriates that $500,000 additional free cash. And the reason for that is the way town meeting is currently scheduled with the current schedule of the town election, there wasn't sufficient notice. We required 35 days between the town meeting and the election to have the CPA exemption adopted for this upcoming fiscal year. So as currently contemplated, the CPA exemption would occur in 2022, and the WIF would be implemented in 2021. So you have that 1 year where there would be an imbalance. So the $500,000 in Article 15 rectifies that imbalance for that 1 year. All that being said, with the recent change in the town meeting and a potential vote to change the town election, we might be able to provide for that 35-day notice and therefore adjust so that both of these things get adopted for FY21 at the same time, therefore eliminating the need for the free cash in Article 15.
Would they go back into Article 10?
It'd be unallocated free cash.
Okay.
We could make a motion from the floor at town meeting to backstop any shortfalls we might have for this year resulting from the current situation with the COVID-19.
Okay. So would it be $1 million or $500,000?
$500,000 in Article 15.
Okay, it's $500,000. Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Also, we didn't get much snow this year, so we should have a lot of free cash in the snow removal, right?
Well, that would become, this is Rich Bienvenu again, that would be free cash resultant from this fiscal year, which we don't get certified until the fall.
Okay.
So what we're talking about now is what was certified last fall.
Okay.
Prior year.
Okay, so that's a gift for next year.
Exactly. We can't pre-spend it even though we've identified where there might be some savings until it's certified by the Department of Revenue.
Rich, if I might, though, this is Dan Knappich. Nate, were you just talking about if there was a deficit in the snow and ice account?
No, if I read this thing correctly, we had $475,000 put away for snow and some other stuff. Correct?
That was my understanding.
I believe. And, can we put that someplace where I know Phil's down 3 people already. I don't know how many more. I don't know what the police have had in overtime for this virus and stuff like this. Can we stick that someplace where we can use that to help out with that?
This is Rich Bienvenu. If we do have a provision in our charter to take unspent appropriations with the approval of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to reappropriate it for other line items within the budget. And so if we have shortfalls, as you indicated, for various reasons, we could take care of it within this fiscal year using those funds. Absent that, those funds just return to the general fund and become certified as part of next year's free cash.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So right now we have an article in front of us of free cash of $1,595,000. Any further discussion, or I'll entertain a motion?
I got a question, Ken.
Yep. Go ahead, Jack.
The third item on the article is that 130,000 or is that 1,300,000?
That's 130,000. Oh, there's an extra zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the comma's in the right place on the left side. The zeros are in the wrong place on the right side.
No. So it's 130.
Yeah, it's 130.
Okay.
That's a comma.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thanks. Don't get nice, Jay. I've got enough problem with my eye. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion we accept it.
Nate has made a motion to accept $1,595,000 of free cash. Do we have a second?
Okay, from Sarah.
Sarah? Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
And Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 7-0. Thank you. I asked, again, I'm following the agenda, so we're going to be off the warrant for a second. So I don't think it matters that much how we do this. But I just wanted to take a couple minutes. I know I had mentioned that we had not, Carl Van Hoen couldn't make it to our meetings, or at least the one we originally scheduled. And so we decided, or I decided, that there wasn't a heck of a lot going on to bring him in on a night where he'd have to change his schedule. Therefore, we really haven't talked about the Department of Natural Resources. So I asked Dan to just give 1 minute, if that's all it takes, of commentary on natural resources. And I had it open in my book. I don't know what to do with it.
It's in the warrant on page 4.
The full thing is in the warrant?
Yeah.
The budget, of course, is in the...
So, in the Natural Resources Department, just to kind of go back briefly, so they have been down 2 officers in the positions, one since last July and one probably since October. We have since hired a replacement for one of the officers, and the second one, we had somebody almost ready to start, and then they ended up withdrawing, but now we're in the process of hiring the second. So I'm hoping that by the end of this month or mid-April, we'll have a full complement of staff at DNR. So based on that, in the budget, which is 8 full-time equivalent positions plus their seasonals, is $647,481. That's about $17,000 more than the previous year, and that's due to contract settlements that are now reflected in the FY21 budget. Their expense line has gone up. We sent back fuel back to them. As you recall, a couple of years ago, energy used to be paid for. Like, energy was a large topic in administration's budget, but we sent back to the departments that have them, like things like fuel. So now they're responsible for their own fuel, and also I think we're carrying some in marina costs. So the amount year over year is the same, but it jumped up from 19 to 20, but we're carrying the same number for this year for those same expenses.
Any questions on natural resources? The total budget would be $791,527. If there's any discussion or no discussion, I'll accept a motion to approve the budget.
I'll make a motion, Jessica.
Jessica, second? I heard 2 voices at the same time, so I'll take Jessica's first. And was it Jack? Was that you seconded?
Yeah.
Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
And Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we've been deferring that for a while, so not a big change. One other budget area that we have not voted on and approved, we've got 2 more. Health services. If you recall, Bruce Murphy and the housing inspection team came in and made a presentation. I'm just refreshing memories. I'm not advocating or opinionating anything here, but Bruce had made an appeal to add a full-time housing inspector. That is not in the current budget, and right now it's being funded through a combination of part-time and an intern. Obviously, the health department is under a lot of strain right now, but that request was not for the health department per se. It was for housing inspections. So Their budget as presented, well, that's under the articles too, right?
It's page 6 of the warrant.
Go into my book.
1,400,412,706.
Yep. Discussion, thoughts?
I know he was, this is Jessica, I know he was trying to come up with some creative ways or something and talking with Dan on possibly different ways to get that position. Did he ever come up with anything, or where are we with that?
Well, so not all the revenue, of course, is in on the short term. He was facing tough position that with the short-term rental and the increase in the registration numbers, and he had demonstrated from year to date that we did have an uptick from year over year. But like I had mentioned, I said, it's still kind of early in the process, and at that time we didn't have a full understanding of how much total revenue would be generated. Now with the situation with the virus going on, he's pretty much at wit's end as it relates to his bandwidth on this. But certainly over the next couple of weeks, when we get a better understanding of what the impacts of short-term rental were and also of registrations, we can revisit this topic. But for now, we were comfortable just carrying the part-time and the intern concept to operate for next year's budget.
Any other?
Yeah, part-time. The part-time position would be an add, so he would be picking up a position up to 20 hours a week.
So they are getting some of the relief here,
right?
And the revenue is beneficial, but the game is still in the 6th inning.
Yeah, so time doesn't come with benefits. You're probably looking at a pay range somewhere around the line of 30,000. So if you had a full timer, you're talking about 55 to 65,000, and then that benefits of 40% more. So this is kind of a way to put one foot in the water to see if it's needed without having too much financial exposure, if you will.
So M1-1 would be 8 full-time plus 1?
No, it would be covered under part-time. We don't know that.
Oh, okay.
FTE is full-time equivalent.
Yeah, but one place before we had plus 1, which was a part-time.
I'm not sure. That might have been dropped off this page.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
All right. Okay. Any further discussion? So the budget would be $1,412,706,000 as presented. Do we have a motion?
I'll give you a motion.
Was that Jack?
Yep.
And seconded by someone?
I'll second it, Nate.
Nate. Okay. Take the votes. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. I've forgotten to vote on all these, so all the votes so far have been 8-0.
We can make a motion to add you to that.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to re-vote all my votes as ayes, so we'll, yeah. But it's funny, when you can't look at people, you tend to make mistakes. All right, we have the next item is the police department, which is before
Article.
is that page 5 in your program. Page police department. By the way, just as an editorial comment, again, I hope you look at the monthly financial reports that Maria sends out, and I look at a lot of it, and police overtime it's not a wonderful story, but it's a better story than it's been. The overtime cost is down from the last couple of years. As we've said before, it tends to push up against the budget, but at least the raw expenses are down and under relative control, at least based on that report. So it's a story I think a number of people should look at as positive and not a huge red flag at this point, thank goodness, compared to all the other things we're dealing with. That's at least how I observe it. If other people don't, that's a different story. So the police budget is, well, do we have a...
Page 5.
Yeah, it's page 5. I like to make sure we have the total. I gotta add it up here. Some of you are faster at adding this stuff than I am.
It's on the top of page 6. The total is 15 million for.
Well, but that's also fire.
Oh, it is?
And we already voted fire.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So.
My mistake.
We won't hold it against you. And has this changed much from?
So,
there
from
were
the
going to be a couple.
presentation, we had heard from the chief the increased costs of the contract requirement associated with purchasing uniforms. So we added some additional money for uniforms, ammunition, and a copier lease.
Okay, when I'm adding up the budget here, there's a negative under overtime. Do I subtract that out?
No, it's rolled to the wages.
So it's just a subset?
Yeah.
Okay, so the total budget is $7,651,138.
Motion to accept from Robert.
Robert?
I'll second from Brian.
Just want to write down this number again while I got it. My little adding machine. Okay, George?
Aye.
Robert? Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just I don't think I should let the police budget go without talking about it. I think we've had great improvements in overtime due to we've been pretty healthy, knock on wood, LOD related claims. But I think the most significant thing is the quickening of the pace of hiring. So we were able to work with the unions to be able to bring officers on board quicker, and we've also had exceptional luck bringing to town officers that have been trained at other departments that migrated here to Yarmouth. And that can't be understated. So, if we have to take on somebody right out of college, say, without the academy, then we accrue quite a bit of extra expense. So the police management has done a good job. They had said that these were things they needed to have the tools to do to cut down on that, and they've been true to their word on that. So we've been very fortunate.
Okay, next item I put on the agenda, not exactly sure what, is again a review of articles that we need to take into consideration. And let me just go over this for a second. There are a grand total of 29? Am I reading it right? 30. Oh, wait a minute, maybe there's more. 31 articles. So we do need to.
So on this one, we had talked before due to timing that we could do a lot of these recommendations from the floor, but we have some time now. That town meeting's been pushed off to May 19th. That if you wanted to make some recommendations on these, we could get those into the booklet.
I'm definitely against Article 29. And the reason being is it says in the case of emergency, we can have single-use water bottles. But if the stores normally can't stock them, they're not going to have them anyway when you need them. I just think the camel's got its nose under the tent.
Where is that written? I just want to see where.
Page 26.
Article 29,
See it.
sale of single-use plastic water bottles.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at what you just pointed out. That in an emergency,
The exemption, section 3.
Yeah, so this came up before when it was last year, and they were talking about just town supplied or purchased. And that wasn't really so much of an issue because the supply chain, as Nate had mentioned, would still be out there. All the stores were still producing that. So if we ran into a pinch and fire department needed to dole out some single-use water bottles, you could go down to the store and get some. Under this provision, the supply chain in town of those items would dry up, and they would not necessarily be easily available at the times of a crisis.
So you couldn't run down the shores and get some because they weren't stocking it.
That's right.
Kind of like toilet paper right now.
Here, Walgreens, Nate, has a good supply right now, if you want to check that out. I was there just about an hour ago.
Why don't we get a Walgreens in town?
Right down the street.
yeah.
Oh, we do have one. That's right. I forgot. I'm sorry.
Well, let me just
From Walmart.
let me just, I guess, jump ahead a little bit. I think to allude to what Dan was saying. I think many of you know the town meeting has now been moved to May 19th. If you weren't aware of that, you are now.
It's a Tuesday night.
Yeah, May 19th. We had tentatively scheduled, and now we postponed, a presentation by this group. They really they've changed their name, and their focus is more on commitment to energy conservation, climate change measures, et cetera, as opposed to highlighting, this is at least the way they presented it, highlighting plastic containers, but that's still a component of it. In any event, I notified, we were going to have them in on April 1st. I notified them that we were deferring that until further notice. I don't think we can have a group of 3 or 4 people come in.
No, we can't, but if you wanted to bring them in, we should have the Zoom capability set up by next week. So it would just be a matter of communicating with any group that you want to bring in, the conference call information for that. They could join us by video telephone. We could do that. We have time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could maybe make it somewhere in the middle of the month. Okay.
Second week.
Okay. All right. And Nate, that doesn't change your or other people's current position, but we had offered them an opportunity to present, and if there was some sort of counter to that, they would do that. Yeah, it's a little choppy, I guess, to figure out at this stage of the game where we take a position on articles and whether we probably ought to defer that.
That particular article?
Not that one. Well, yeah, that one we probably have to defer.
But I think if you're ready to take some votes on recommendations of articles based on information you know today, that just helps clear the deck a little bit for down the line, so we can get the warrant edited to indicate that, so it saves us a little bit of work too.
Well, why don't we go over them? Starting at Article 11?
Hold on.
Because we've pretty much voted the budgets.
Mr. Chairman, Article 1 is a catch-up article for this fiscal year.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Article 1 is to transfer and appropriate a sum of money to provide additional funds of $350,000 for DPW C&D out of free cash, and $500,000 for septage retained earnings. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll just explain that a little bit. The first part, the C&D, is the same issue we've had the last couple of years, where the volume coming into the facility is greater than what's been provided for in the appropriation. And so we're over the appropriation, and we are also over the revenue associated with that as well. This is, I think, the third year in a row that situation has occurred, and the current circumstances notwithstanding, if that were to continue, we did accommodate for this additional increase in appropriation next year in the next year's budget, so that we don't have to keep coming back year after year. But it remains to be seen whether that materializes if things were to slow down. But in any event, we have offsetting revenue earned in this year for this request. It's just the timing of when it's certified as free cash is different. The second piece, as I believe Ed Centeo or Jeff Colby have presented to you in the past, sludge disposal is becoming very challenging, and there might be additional costs between now and the end of the fiscal year in disposal. And in any event, to the extent there aren't, or that we can withstand those increases through the remaining budget, we do want to set aside whatever is not needed for that purpose into the septage reserve, so that we can address the long-term solution to sludge disposal, which is the anaerobic digester project that Ed has briefed you on in the past.
Okay, so we had an account for retained earnings in septage, so we're moving it to a reserve fund?
To appropriate money for any increased costs for this year, and if not needed for that, then it would go to the reserve.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Jeff did, I think, explain that in pretty graphic terms. Do we have a motion to accept Article 1?
I'll make a motion.
Nate?
Yep.
Do we have a second? I think I heard a second, but I couldn't tell who it was.
Hey, Robert.
Robert. Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It's 8-0. Okay, Article 1. Article 2. Well, Article 2 is all these budgets.
Yeah, the general budget.
Yeah. So we voted on all the budgets. So that one, when they go over at the town meeting, the budgets, we have essentially at this point supported all the budgets basically as presented. I mean, after amendments and modifications. Yeah. Okay. So do we move to Article 11? Or am I jumping over things? I don't know. Article 10 was the free cash. We voted that. Right? Article 11.
How about Article 6 for the schools? That's pending, right?
Good point.
Right, so the assessment's being mailed to us, Nate. They had just come out with that. I got an email last week. We're going to have to call them in for a public hearing, probably in the next couple weeks, to have them officially present what the final calculation on their budget was. So I'd hold off on doing anything on number 6.
Okay. So 6 is a whole. Good, okay.
Good catch. Thanks, Nate.
Okay.
Yeah, Article 8 was...
Article 7's a done deal, right? That's the tech school.
That's the tech school.
Yeah.
We did not vote on that. We had, Bob came in, and so we should vote on Article 7. That's the Cape Tech.
Yeah.
The budget was $4,090,107, which was an increase due to enrollment. And Mr. Sanborn, I think, presented in pretty great detail the components, and there were some significant changes, although he seemed to go over them pretty clearly. So I don't know if anybody has further questions or comments or amendments or suggestions or a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Do we have a second?
Second. I'll second, George.
Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm in favor. So that Article 7 passes. Article 8 we've already voted on. Article 9 is the water enterprise. If the town will vote to raise...
Chairman, that's the Water Capital Fund.
Okay.
It's part of the capital budget, but it's presented separately because it's its own separate fund.
Yep. Yep, we got that. Okay.
I do not think you voted that, however.
I thought we voted as a component of capital, maybe not.
Well, when you listed the funding sources in capital, you didn't indicate that in your total.
Okay. This is the capital from the water, as Rich just said, with a request of $2,120,000. Any questions, comments?
I make a motion, Robert, as to approve as submitted. Yes, President.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, Brian.
Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Ken? Aye. Thank you. Eventually I'm going to get to this Article 11. Okay, so Article 10 was free cash. We voted that.
Voted that.
Okay. Article 11. So for the result of settlement. It's a collective bargaining.
Right, that's for contract settlements. So we will come up with a number the day on the floor.
Okay.
What the dollar value is.
All right. Article 12, from the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund of $379,279.
Mr. Chairman, that amount is calculated in accordance with a special legislation that the town adopted, and the amount represents the amount required in the legislation.
Okay. Any questions, comments? We'll accept the motion.
Motion to accept Article 12 is printed. Robert.
Robert? Do we have a second?
George, second. George, second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Votes. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And aye from me. Okay. Article 13, Water Resource Enterprise Fund.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's no money associated with this article as far as an appropriation. However, what the intent is to create a separate enterprise fund to provide for our wastewater activity that is being proposed in subsequent articles. But in addition, it would also consolidate the existing what's called our water surplus account, similar to an enterprise fund, and our septage enterprise into one overall enterprise fund, just for ease of accounting, and also for sharing of operating costs. For example, we have a new position that has been approved, a wastewater superintendent. That would be an example of how operating costs would be shared among this enterprise fund.
Yeah.
However, each of those activities would be accounted for separately within the overall enterprise fund. So in other words, we still would have water accounts, we'd have new wastewater accounts, and we'd still have separate septage plant accounts. All the assets and liabilities of those funds as they exist at the end of June 30th would be consolidated into this new fund and be the opening balances for the new fund effective July 1.
Okay. I know Jeff talked about that at the presentation here, and he made he and an associate made a presentation to the board about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was pretty detailed, if anyone saw it. So, yeah, it is the founding of a new enterprise fund. It's a consolidation. So, anything beyond that explanation from a question standpoint from the committee? Again, there's no immediate financial consideration, but it's something we should take a position on. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to accept.
That's Nate. Second?
Yep.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. I'll second it, George.
Okay. I'll take it.
Just should resolve something here. I'm somewhat conflicted because I'm on the Water Resources Advisory Committee, which recommended this. In some place it says I can't be on 2 committees, but I think those are 2 committees that have control, whereas Water Resources is just an advisory committee. So I don't think that pertains here, but in case it does, I'm raising it.
Is your comment that you question whether to vote?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you can abstain or recuse. It's not. We'll accept that as an abstention.
I'd be practicing law without a license.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It shouldn't be material. We'll move to Robert.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Jessica.
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Aye here, and so it's 7-0 with 1 abstention due to potential conflict.
So I prefer to record myself as having voted aye.
Yeah, it's a better word than conflict. I didn't.
Right, I mean, so did he abstain?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Abstention. We don't have to detail it. Okay. The next is also, I think, tied to this Article 14, and again, Rich, maybe you can talk about that. See if the town will raise $625,000 and transfer from septage retained earnings for a total appropriation of $1.25 million to transfer to a wastewater capital reserve account or to act on anything relative to.
Right. So starting with the prior article and through the next couple, this series of articles has to do with the work of the Water Resource Advisory Committee in coming up with recommendations for a wastewater plan, as we've talked about phase one. In the funding plan associated with that, the committee, the RAC, identified new short-term rental receipts of about we're using $500,000 out of an estimated of just under $600,000. And they've also identified about $125,000 of energy savings, which were presented to the Board of Selectmen and included in the RAC's recommended financing plan. And so this article starts that process and puts it in a capital reserve so that we can begin pre-funding the plan as we've talked about on a couple occasions. The goal being that the debt service associated with the wastewater collection and system and plant isn't planned to begin until fiscal year 25 or 26. But by pre-funding it, we're hoping to minimize any shortfalls or spikes in funding in any one particular year. So I think as we last left it, our pre-funding results in about $5 to $6 million. You know, if the plan were to go according to the plan of pre-funding, which would help smooth out any shortfalls in any given year.
And if you jump ahead, if the committee jumps ahead to Article 16, that's where they talk about the change to the CPA appropriation and the exemption of $100,000. So the reason I say it is because as I was listening to Rich, you know, I know that some of these things were connected, and so as Rich said, several of these articles are sort of tied to each other. So that's Article 15, or no? 14. 14. Do we have any questions on 14? Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll move we accept. Yeah.
Is that Jack? Do we have a second?
Yep.
Did I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Nate? Any more questions? Any thoughts? I think it's going to still take me a little while to get my head around all these things and how they tie together. And I know that I'm not sure there is one selectman that seems to have an issue with the funding mechanism, but that's not very immediate. So we'll take a vote. George?
Aye. And I just want to go back to my previous point. I would rather be recorded as in favor. I think the position taken by a specific selectman that I can't be on both committees is a misinterpretation of the statute we passed at the last town meeting, because my seat on the Water Resources Advisory Committee is just that. It's advisory. And there's seeming conflict that's in that motion, that article we voted on at the last town meeting doesn't refer to the advisory committee. So I believe I can take position. So I'd rather be recorded as in favor.
Okay, I'm not sure I heard everything you said, quite honestly. Did everybody hear that? Does everybody have any questions? Okay. Well,
So I'm voting aye.
okay. Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, I'm an aye. Okay. As I thought we went through this, I got what you were saying, George. I'm a little slow on the draw there. Article 15.
South Carolina's a long way away.
Mr. Chairman, on Article 15, I'll explain that and 16 together, and perhaps you can vote them separately, but the explanation is tied together. Article 15 is the adoption of the Water Infrastructure Investment Fund, the WIF, and that is the discussion we've had in the past on several occasions about adopting a surcharge similar to the State Preservation Act surcharge. And in this case, the article presented a 0.78% surcharge,
Right.
which would add just about $500,000 of additional property tax surcharge to the taxpayers of Yarmouth. So to offset that increase in surcharge, the Board of Selectmen at their recent meeting in Article 16 has recommended the adoption of a community preservation $100,000 residential exemption, which coincidentally results in a $500,000 decrease in the CPA surcharge. So you add $500,000 in Article 15,
Right.
and you reduce $500,000 in Article 16, resulting in no overall property tax surcharges. With one caveat here, as it's currently laid out, because of the timing of the election, Article 16 cannot be implemented until fiscal year 2022, and Article 15, the add, could be implemented in FY21. So to offset that increase in that first year of FY21, the Selectmen elected to apply $500,000 of free cash to reduce property taxes, or to offset property taxes generated from this article. So Article 15 has two pieces to it. It's to add the 0.78% WIF surcharge, and to apply $500 in FY21, and in FY21 offset that by $500,000 of free cash. And then in Article 16, that's to the permanent offset, so to speak, by reducing the CPA surcharge by the way of the exemption, starting in FY22 and beyond.
Okay. The one item that I always take away from this is that the 0.78 generates, the offsetting revenue by exempting the first $100,000 of taxable real estate value, but it's not equal for every single taxpayer, but it is a basic, almost a wash for the town as a whole. That just so everybody has heard that probably for the 50th time, that is an issue that we should at least be aware of when we're taking a position.
Yeah, and the break even is the vast majority of households in Yarmouth is about a little over $400,000. So in other words, the addition of the 0.78% surcharge generates an amount equal to the $100,000 exemption up to the $400,000 level. So if your home values are $400,000 or less, you're breaking even, or even having a little bit of a break on your property tax bill. If somebody has a $400,000 or more home, it's a very small amount of an increase. If you had $1 million home, I think the overall impact is about $30.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for that. It's been a long road, Rich, and thanks for that explanation. So let's take each one as a separate article, though. Do we have a motion or questions, or any further questions or a motion on Article 15?
Well, can I throw some general questions out there?
Sure.
Well, one thing is thanks, Rick, for explaining that anybody who has a home over $400,000 actually sees an increase, and I think the wording is a little misleading. I also think that the fact that we are actually going to raise more money and more taxes, because if you look what happens, the first $100,000, anybody who has a home less than $400,000 will actually get a break, anybody with a home that's worth $200,000 is going to get a reduction in taxes, but anybody with a $600,000 home, that's going to see an increase. I think the wording in the article itself is a little deceiving. I also am waiting to hear back from the state on something. I can't figure out if we do something different. Like they talk about the $100,000 exemption. They said you couldn't do a $200,000 exemption, okay? Because the state wouldn't allow it. But what they haven't answered is that we only lose rounds 2 and 3 by doing a $200,000 exemption. I can't get that answer out of anybody. Rich, do you know that answer?
So what you're referring to is a state matching funds, which if you were at the 3%, so the residential exemption exempts the first $100,000 in the calculation of the CPA surcharge. But the surcharge is still at 3%.
3%.
So that keeps you eligible for the full state match. But it's not an easy formula. There's several rounds of the state match. And so what Robert's referring to is to be eligible for rounds 2 and 3, as they've traditionally been distributed, you need to be at 3%. And we are at 3% under this arrangement, so therefore would qualify for the additional match. And as of late, it hasn't been substantial. It's been about an additional $25,000 or so, but we'd still be eligible for that. So it's minimizing the impact to the CPA or the CPC committee. The other thing that Robert mentioned is he's correct. There's very specific exemptions that are provided under the laws pertaining to the CPA surcharge, and I forget the total of them, but there's probably at least 3 different exemptions that you could adopt. At this point, we've only contemplated implementing this one $100,000 residential exemption. Town meeting could act on the others as well, but they haven't been proposed. The bottom line was, overall, as you indicated, any particular homeowner could have a slight impact, be positive or negative, but overall, the Article 15 raises $500,000 in total, and Article 16 reduces $500,000 in total. There is an exemption commercial, and I don't recall them all off the top of my head now, but there are other exemptions, and if the town wanted to implement them, you could implement them. But
there's still exemptions, Rich, but none of us will help residentials. The commercial splits and stuff like that they can do. But my point is, if we're all listing is round 2 and 3, and we're all doing all this jumping through hoops to save 25 grand in rounds 2 and 3, I'd rather see a much bigger percentage go towards wastewater, which is our $140 million problem. And I've talked to Gary and Ken. They can't come up with more than $20 million worth of issues in the next 5 years. It just seems wrong to me that we're not reducing that more, and we're using the excuse that the state match, or we're saying the state match is what's important. It's only 25 grand.
Well, I guess what I'd say, some of the discussions I've had, this is Rich again, has to do with, we're in the pre-funding phase. So in other words, as you all know, the Water Resource Advisory Committee recommended a 1.5% fund, not 0.78. But that was full funding when the full debt service would need to be paid. But that's not for 5 to 6 years from now. So this is a start in the pre-funding phase to get us to a little over $5 million of pre-funding before that full funding has to start. And there's so many things that can change in this time. It gives some time to see how everything shakes out. Perhaps we qualify, as we heard from the SRF folks from the state, that perhaps we're eligible for a subsidy on our plans, a debt forgiveness subsidy. Perhaps some of our other funding sources come through better than we anticipated. And so this was basically getting the pre-funding started, and absent anything changing from our projections, which we know they will, we would need to do something further 5 or 6 years from now. The other thing I would submit is the discussion at the Board of Selectmen meeting when they've adopted this article or this approach was based on a 7-0 vote of recommendation from the CPC. So it's something that the CPC fully supported as well as an approach to start.
I think that's kind of my point. We're letting the CPC people run the ship. And I'm saying as a FinCom member, I think the town, my understanding is the town would rather have that money go towards wastewater and not see any increases at all in taxes. And that's what we're doing. We are increasing taxes.
Well,
but I've said enough on that article. I'm good. I just wanted to vent a little bit and get everybody on the same page as me. If I hear more from the state back or they do more research, I think we're only doing this whole thing for $25,000, but that's entirely up to the board.
Robert, what I would say to that, though, is there's two things that I guess not necessarily debating it as much as saying the townspeople would still consider CPA short-term, something they can see, and they would see wastewater as a little bit longer term. The other thing is, maybe more important, we've got to see how the townspeople vote on the wastewater. They didn't vote it up the last time.
Again, that's my point, which is I really want to see wastewater succeed, even to the extent that all the CPA funds went away. It wouldn't make any difference. Wastewater, I think, is the number one issue for this town right now. We want to make, and I want to do everything I can to have it succeed.
I guess you're making your point. I just don't know. I don't know if this is a subject of a motion or a discussion or a suggestion or amendment or what it is, or defer.
Let me ask this question. Could I ask to defer until I can get a little bit more research back? Would the board be willing just to pass on these two?
Yeah, we have time. I think we've got enough. Put it this way: we got enough education. If I look at pages 17 and 18 of the warrant, we got enough education on what's in front of us today. If nothing changes and we have to vote this article in a few weeks after some further research that may shed some new light on it, I don't have a problem deferring because there's no urgency and we do have a lot of current information. So that's my view. At the same time, anyone can make a motion to move this issue, second it, and vote on it. So you can also make a motion to defer, or we can just all agree to defer. Any thoughts on, does anybody have a problem deferring this discussion for the next meeting? Again, the information won't. Go ahead, Jessica.
I think we should defer it just so we can. Because now that we have the actual language in front of us, I would like to reread it and just make sure I understand it as well, because we didn't have it written out in this manner, so I would like more time to review it. I'm with Jessica on that.
Okay. Makes sense. And we'll defer. Do we agree that we're deferring 15 and 16? I just need to know that technically, so I can put it on the agenda for the next meeting. And Robert, in the meantime, you'll have done some research?
I push for those answers every other day.
Okay. All right. Hearing no objections, we'll move on to, Article 17. Pretty important.
So again, Article 17 doesn't indicate a specific appropriation.
Right.
But it does have financial impacts. By voting yes on Article 17, that would approve the town's participation in the CHY Clean Waters Community Partnership.
Yep.
The main thing that we're waiting on that, we've kind of slowed down a little bit because of the inability to have met on a few items. But there's some final tweaking of the operating agreement, and so at this moment it's not final. So perhaps you might defer your decision on this at this point. but it's essentially along the same lines as we've been discussing for the past year at this point. Nothing substantial has changed. It was just the final pieces of the clarifying language. But that's what that article is. If you vote to participate, then we become responsible for assessments associated with building a wastewater treatment facility in the town of Dennis for our corresponding share.
Okay. So if we took this article up today, we would be committing to our recommendation to join the partnership with all the financial benefits and obligations that go with it.
Correct.
I mean, in a way, the tail's wagging the dog. Because I don't mind saying, I personally, I think I've seen so much information on the financial aspects of this that from the town standpoint, to join the consortium makes tremendous financial sense. But that's the financial piece of it, and that's my opinion. The contractual piece, is somewhat different. So I guess my question is, will we be voting on the whole ball of wax? Maybe Dan knows. If we voted on this article, let's just say I, for example, understand it pretty well, and I like the financial aspects for the town. If I said I'm in favor of Article 17 today, that means that the Finance Committee has said we not only support the contractual wording, but also the financial aspects of it.
I think by taking a vote on that item, that article, that the underlying, you've seen the agreement amongst the towns.
Yeah.
So you're essentially endorsing the birth of an entity that has an ability to put a tax
right
there, right?
Yeah, and one of the reasons then would be the financial benefit.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Redevelopment benefit.
Yeah. Well, the bonding savings, the operating cost savings, those are pretty compelling. But again, that's my opinion. I'm just trying to figure out what we'd be voting on. So again, if the committee believes that there's pieces of the contract that are important enough to help you make a better decision, then deferring seems like a pretty reasonable option. Do people agree with that?
I'd like to see it in whole. This is Robert.
Okay.
This is Jessica. Can I just ask one quick question?
Sure.
If say Yarmouth votes this through, and then one of the other towns does not, what exactly happens again? I know we've discussed this before, but I'm just drawing a blank at the moment.
Well, I think if it's Dennis that votes for it and we vote for it, we can still move ahead with the partnership. But if Harwich votes for it and Dennis doesn't, I think that becomes problematic for us.
But then if Dennis did vote for it and Harwich didn't, we would obviously go back and redo all the language and the financials?
Yeah, we'd have to make some revisions, I suppose, to the agreement. Part of it would be, do you want to reserve the 15% allocation for Harwich for a future opportunity for them to buy into the plant? Because the theory would be you'd go ahead and build the plant based on the two partners, and then if the third partner wanted to come into the agreement at some later date, they would have to, essentially give up some of their percentage of the plant to allow that. So it really becomes a more significant conversation if you want to carry the cost of Harwich's unallocated sum.
Would that make it to fall meeting, or do you think that would take another year to go through?
No, so if Dennis and Yarmouth passed and Harwich didn't, would Harwich try again? Is that what you're saying?
I think she's asking if we would have to take it up again in the fall.
Well, I think what
No.
passed with Dennis and Dennis, they can they could probably bring together a commission. I'd have to get further legal guidance on that, but that's not something that's been right now contemplated. Like what the form, it's been contemplated as it relates to what would happen if one of the members doesn't come in. It's just not, what legal form does that take to have the entity become legal? It's, we've talked about the idea if one member didn't want in at a later date, how do you let them in?
Well, also practically speaking, I guess I'd suggest that if one town didn't, regardless of which town it was, didn't approve it this spring, they certainly would have another opportunity to do it in the fall. Practically speaking, that's likely what would happen. We can't speak for the other communities or what we might do in the fall, but there probably would be time to have a follow-up vote in that event.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question. So
I think it can't be.
I guess I was just making sure we weren't waiting another whole year for this to kind of get another chance if it was to fail.
So that would be the discussion, would be, if 2 out of 3 approved and 1 didn't, would the other 2 want to wait practically if something were also to be followed up with for the third town that didn't adopt it in the fall? And the answer is probably yes, because there's a lot that would need to be done anyway. So you could probably just, get the ball rolling and wait that time. I think to your point, though, if it was a year later, it were Dennis and Yarmouth that approved, we may not want to wait a year for all the, cost savings we think we have by moving earlier than later. But, of course, that's changing, too, with the current environment. So we have to wait and see how it all falls out.
Yeah, and although we won't know any of that shortly, it still makes a lot of sense if people don't want to vote on this article right now to defer it until we have, I guess, time to at least absorb it and get further language on the contract in the next few weeks. Put it this way: not voting today doesn't kill anything. So is the agreement of the committee to defer until next time? And then decide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. 18 is design and engineering of the water collection system. Is this tied to 17, Rich?
So this is the final wastewater article.
Yeah.
In this series of articles. So going back to the beginning, we set up the enterprise fund. We approved $1,125,000 from our local funding sources. We adopted presumably the Water Investment Infrastructure Fund, and all that money is building up pre-funding to pay for eventual debt service. So Article 18 is the start of that eventual debt service, getting a borrowing authorization so that we can do the final design on the system and get more concrete estimates as what the overall project is going to cost. As we've talked about, we're basically talking about $127 million for Phase 1 are our planning estimates. By doing the final design, that would allow us to hone in those numbers and get a better number that we can go out to bid with. But more importantly, it also allows us to do some planning and coordination work with the Massachusetts DOT, who you have heard is doing several projects on Route 28 in Yarmouth, and our plan is to coordinate our work with their work so that they pick up a large amount of the costs associated with opening up and repaving the road and saving us substantial dollars. So we want to be able to implement, if it's a pipe through an intersection or an empty chamber of some sort, we want to be able to take advantage of that and put that in the ground when they're doing their work. That avoids the 5-year moratorium on doing the work after they're done with their project.
Anybody want to make a motion on that article?
I'll make a motion we accept it.
Any second?
I'll second, George.
George. Take votes. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate? Aye. Sarah?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I probably should just clarify as well, in case you have the question. I think we've talked about this before, but since we're broadcasting and recording the meeting, this is a town meeting vote. There is no ballot required for this because it's not a debt exclusion, which is different for the town of Yarmouth. The DPW facility, for example, was a debt exclusion,
Right.
meaning that the debt service is added to the tax levy. This purposely is not written in that manner and therefore doesn't require a ballot vote because, again, the overall plan is not relying on tax levy support. So we are planning on the receipts that we're starting to set aside in these prior articles to pay for this the debt service on this bond authorization ultimately.
Okay, so it's funded differently. Yep. Okay. Article 19 looks like a cleanup article to rescind the following amounts of unissued borrowing. This was for the school feasibility study. Was this an article that was in there in case we had to borrow?
That's correct.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have a curiosity question. Did Dennis have a chip in to the,
Yeah, so we
possibly,
sent an invoice, Robert, the other day, so they have an article on their town meeting for it.
okay, thank you.
Okay, probably for what, 30%?
It's like $125 or $130,000.
Based on the agreement, yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion?
It's George, as written.
George, you made a motion
Yeah, to approve as written.
to approve? Do we have a second?
I'll second, Robert.
Robert? George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay, Article 20. CPA. This was based on the CPA presentation, and if you recall, they deferred about 2/3 of their asks. So the CPA request is for 85. Well, community housing 170 and historic preservation basic space. Well, maybe I need an explanation here. There's two different options, but obviously one of them is with the $100,000 exemption.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on Article 20, there are minimum amounts by law that the CPC needs to set aside, 10% of estimated revenues. Of course, the question is 10% of what total estimated revenues? And that's dependent upon whether town meeting passes the prior article on the exemption. And so that's why both amounts are presented.
Okay.
So if the prior article does not pass, then Article 20 would be voting on the first column for the full 3% surcharge.
Okay.
If the prior article does pass, then it'd be voting on the second column for the 3% with the $100,000 exemption.
Got it. Any questions? We have a motion. I'll take the first motion I hear.
Moved. All motion.
Is that Jessica?
Yes.
Second?
Sarah.
Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay. 21. This is another standing article, right? Isn't the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust funding this?
This is funding
Yeah.
through the Housing Trust.
Yeah. $200,000 from the CPA.
Correct.
Right. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move we approve it.
Who's that, Jack?
I'll second it. Yeah.
We have a second?
A second, George.
George.
Yes.
George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. 22. If the town will appropriate for community housing purposes $80,000 from the CPA Housing Fund to the Harwich Ecumenical Council for Housing, reserve homes or repairs for income eligible homeowners. This is another article that took several communities which have joined together to fund some affordable housing, and this has happened before. Any discussion? Questions?
Motion to accept 21 as submitted.
A second, Robert.
And who was the second? Brian?
Brian.
George?
Aye.
Robert? Bless you.
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you. CPA Historic Resource projects. These were presented to us, and if you recall, at least these components, this was probably the smallest presentation that we've seen. I'm not going to go over all of them. They'll do that at the town meeting, but you have them in front of you. We had no questions, I don't think, during the presentation. Are there any questions now?
I thought we already voted on CPA.
You're right.
That we did too, yeah.
Yeah, we did. Thanks, Jessica. So so 23 and 24. Thank you. We've already voted on. And 25. There's 25 land disposition.
We might have some properties for consideration.
Okay.
Sale or lease.
So 25 is what?
In the event that we want to put some parcels of land in front of town meeting for
Oh, okay.
sale or lease.
Okay, this was one a couple years ago that was either voted down or deferred.
It was like 8 or 9 parcels together.
Yeah.
And one that survived was 50 Workshop Road.
Okay.
Cape Cod Energy Park.
Okay.
So we have some other parcels, similar process. We have a process in place now to review this stuff.
Okay.
Actually, Mr. Chairman and Dan, that is specific to the Ocean Club issue.
Club? Okay.
Okay, but it's not a real financial issue.
Oh, no.
Do we have any? Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Jessica? Do we have a second?
Second.
Sarah? Take a vote. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
I'm aye. 26. Assessors contracts? Does this have a financial?
Well, it does in a sense. Hopefully, will save us money. Under Mass General laws, we're only allowed to execute contracts up to 3 years without town meeting approval. This would allow us to issue a contract for evaluation services for a 5-year period, which matches the cycle that we use in town to do this, which is a little bit more efficient than doing it more frequently.
Okay.
And so it allows us to do an RFP for a vendor to do valuation services for the town every 5 years.
Okay, so something has to be voted on, not just executed by administration. So.
Right.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Ken, do you want to defer to applicant?
If the committee feels that way, fine with me.
There's no applicant on it. This is
Yeah, this isn't a petition.
this is to allow to execute a contract on a 5-year cycle instead of every 3 years. The law requires the maximum term of a contract by law is 3 years unless town meeting approves otherwise.
I understand, Rich, I understand. I'm just saying, in the past, we've deferred to, if it was the planning board that put it on, if it was a non-financial. I'm just going by what we used to do or what we've done in the past.
No, this is a request of our finance department.
Now, this is a little different. Yeah.
Okay.
So it changes the term from 3 years to 5 years. So I do think we should probably take a position, assuming we can get a motion. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move we approve it.
Okay, Jack
I'll second it, George.
and George.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. All right. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Abstain?
Okay. Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Aye. 7-0 and 1 abstention. 27. This is another one. This is not a. I mean, it's not a overt financial issue. This was. Can you give us a background on how is this someone put this on as an article for benefit of surviving veterans or survivors of veterans or?
Yeah, this would provide a property tax exemption. I probably should get a memo with some further information to you, working with Ed Centeo. But it's a property tax exemption, and off the top of my head, I don't recall the amount, but it would be a benefit to taxpayers that would qualify for Gold Star parents or guardians of soldiers or sailors and veterans, essentially. It's very specific.
How did this? I mean, this had to come from somewhere.
Well, in keeping with the Board of Selectmen's goals, the assessors have tried to, to the extent possible, try to provide avenues for folks that have income issues and whatnot. And this would be certainly one of those. I think it falls in line pretty good with that goal.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a positive type issue.
Yeah.
Do we have? Does anybody want to ask questions or make a motion? I can make a motion. Can I? I'll make a motion to approve, to recommend.
I'll second it, George. I'll second it, Jack.
Okay. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, aye. Article 28.
Can I ask a question now that we've approved it?
Yes.
Just for
Recommended.
curiosity, how many people in the town would it affect? Somebody might ask that from the floor that day.
And I'm sure Ed has anticipated that and has that information, so we'll have to get something to you from Ed on that.
Sure, somebody will come up to the microphone and ask that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have to answer it.
You know who I mean.
I don't. I think Ed would have that detail, and it's really a modest cost. Even some of the abatements, the abatement system that we have, frankly, from my view, doesn't reduce taxes as much as I would have thought in the grand.
Yeah, well, you know, some people. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know about them.
Off to 28.
Yep. If this is leasing land.
Yeah, so this is what we started to talk about earlier.
Okay.
These are town-owned parcels that we've identified as good candidates for solar photovoltaic PV projects, likely canopies. So, for example, at our sanitation facility, the idea would be to have a canopy over the sanitation area, so when people drive in, they have protection from the elements, whether it's rain or snow or bright sun. So with solar PV on top for energy conservation and energy savings.
Oh, okay.
And so not only the sanitation location, but we've identified a number of other spots through a planning process we've been going through, particularly at Police Department headquarters, their parking lot, Fire Station 3 in West Yarmouth. Senior Center facility is a good candidate for solar canopy. Town Hall, the new DPW facility, and the Water Department land. So if it's a ground mount structure, that requires that we get town meeting approval. Similar to the prior language, we can only execute contracts up to 3 years by law.
Okay.
So anything above 3 years, we need specific town meeting approval. So we're asking for up to 30 years because when you do a solar installation, the developers of those projects need usually at least a 20-year timeline to make it financially feasible.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to accept a motion to recommend as printed.
Robert? That was Robert, right?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second, George.
George? Any further comment? George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. Okay. 29, I guess without beating it to death, we'll defer. No, I shouldn't say that. I mean, but
No.
it's fair to, is it fair to the people? Is it fair to, we've already committed to having some people come in and present this. Is it fair to have a vote prior to that?
We can have a vote after that if you think that's fair.
Well, it seems logical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Can you make sure when she comes in, I just want to reiterate it again, that she has some financial information with her as well?
Okay. Yeah, my initial invitation was for a half hour. I told him that I put it on. I said the agenda would be a half hour, but I'll reiterate that there should be some. What basically what you're saying is there should be some numbers attached to the proposal. In other words, the costs and benefits.
I mean, when they came last time, she didn't have any. It was all just environmental impact.
Yeah.
And what we should do is right versus wrong. And if she's coming to our committee, I think that she should have some financial impact numbers with her, especially since this is going to impact more than just the initial article that they had. This is now affecting literally every single thing in this town.
Right, and it is the finance committee.
Some more.
Right.
So I think she should just have some more information with her than just environmental impact.
Right, and that's what I'll emphasize is this is the finance committee.
And I think she ought to also have loss of business for the stores, some kind of numbers.
Well, hopefully it's sort of a holistic, kind of approach.
Yeah. It's like if they didn't sell nips anymore at the liquor store.
Yeah, well.
This is George. They have that person that seems to be their advisor or whatever, claims to be an economist. The least you could have is a cost-benefit analysis.
Right.
Proven though it may be. So if they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the term. I know the benefit is going to be exponential, but the cost should be somewhat defined, or based on something empirical. So I'll convey that very clearly to them. I sort of tried to do that, but I'll be clearer. And we'll get to it in a couple minutes. But I think that hopefully we can make an April 8th date. So we're deferring that one for now. Item 30. Town of Yarmouth, we're going to climate emergency driven by human activity. Okay. Well, pretty philosophical. I'll make a leap here, and just rather than get into debating the whole issue, that we defer Article 30 until we can probably discuss it at the same time that we decide on Article 29. It's basically it's a statement. I don't know. Dan, it's a.
Yeah. So I think it's going to appear on 12 town warrants this year, and they initially started out as a bylaw, but then after some feedback, they decided to do it as a non-binding resolution, with the thought process being that decision-making that communities go through when they invest in things like new buildings, like, say, a DPW building or car fleets or something, should take into account, to the extent feasible, net zero energy. Now, there is a lot of guidance out there on building net zero energy buildings, for instance. There just isn't anything that compels us. There's a cost-benefit analysis that you could run, like, say, with the DPW building. If you loaded that with photovoltaic and battery storage, you could come up with a number as it equates to make that as much as possible isolated from the grid so that it's neutral energy consumer. So they didn't want it to bind you, but I did remind them that we are a green community, and we did commit to a 20% energy reduction program for the next 5 years. And they were seemingly pretty pleased about that. So.
Okay, I think that's background sound. So we'll defer that one. You can all read it and have a position. 31 is this solar panel presentation at the Links course. I sent you the brochure. We can make a decision to invite Tom Barron to come in here, but I don't see it happening until late April, early May, unless the committee is much more urgent in wanting that. Any thoughts or comments in opposition to that?
So this would require the town to buy the solar panels, right, and have them installed?
Well, what it would do is it would more than likely lease the project out. It would make the landfill available, the landfill cap, to a solar project. You don't own these on your own. You end up having a partner that goes out and finds what's referred to as off-takers for the power.
But the article calls for a study. The article does not call for execution of a plan. So.
Just a study, okay.
That's right.
I mean, do we own the panels on the firehouse?
No, they're leased.
Okay. So this here could also be a lease so we don't have to put out the full cost of the
Yeah,
panels.
that's typically how you do it. There's no real benefit in buying it on your own.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Those are the articles. Thank you for everything on this. I think it was a very helpful discussion. There's a transfer.
Yeah, there's one transfer tonight. I think you have the paperwork.
Yeah, I got paperwork.
Yeah.
I'll wave it in front of the phone.
Yeah, I got a little right up here. Hold on. It's from Jeff Colby. It's a wage issue. So it says he's requesting the wage transfer for a part-time cemetery administrator. So we had not had that position in the carried in the budget in FY20. So it under part-time wages it ran short, and it is low. Jeff has indicated that it is in his budget for FY21. So it's from the account associated with parks seasonal in the sum of $12,000 to cemetery seasonal $12,000.
That's a pretty traditional transfer. Any questions? Maybe I'd like to make a motion to approve the transfer from.
Jack, I move you approve it.
Okay, from park seasonal to cemetery seasonal.
I'll second Brian.
Jack and Brian. It's funny, we got to take a roll call, but in the United States Senate they can do unanimous consent, and we can't even do that in the little town of Yarmouth here. George?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm in favor. Okay. Any thoughts to God only knows what the world. I think that's mine. Yeah.
Transfers. You keep a file on that?
No. I don't keep any of this. This is the warrant, and
Yeah, Rich. Yeah, this. I think this. Is that yours?
no, Rich gave that to me.
Oh.
Do you need the copies of that?
No.
Okay. You can have the folder. I'll do it. Does April 8th seem to resonate with people? I mean, I know right now schedules are pretty crazy. And we would invite recycling people in and any other items, including further discussion of some of these articles. Okay, I'll send something out. And again, the only administrative I just wanted to mention that the town meeting, just so everybody, is May 19th. There's really nothing else, that I can think of. Anything from the committee? Any questions about anything?
Just how's the town doing in general with this virus thing? How are the people holding up? And our employees?
So the staff to a large event has been working at home to try to limit their person-to-person contact in their town buildings. A number of departments, obviously, like Public Works and Fire and Police, Sanitation, are still on the job, including the Health Department, which is exceptionally busy right now. But business, we're accommodating to this new normal here, so we're getting ready to try to accommodate, for instance, public hearings, which has some issues associated with it. And I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to be in this mode, and we'll adapt to that. Our technology will improve. But it's 5 cases right now in town, 50 in the county, I believe, is the count now. So it's going to continue to increase, I'm sure, over the next couple of weeks. And, you know, with every positive encounter that you have to trace down all those different contacts the health department does to make sure that everybody who came in contact over recent memory has an opportunity to be informed and, if you will, quarantine themselves. We've had, since this started, 3 fire department members that had initial quarantine and 3 police department members. What I would say is all of the communities in the Commonwealth are grappling with the same questions. What happens if, you know, an employee gets a contact? Is it workers' comp? Is it 111F for police and fire? And the answer to that's no. But then, if they're out on leave for an extended period of time, how do you account for that? So we've never been down anything like this before. So there's a lot of special legislation that's been filed. Some of it's come out recently to help us, and there's more coming. So it's a lot of strain on a lot of people, and you know, it's one of those things that I don't think, you know, the country's going to be the same coming out of this. It's definitely.
So fire's down 3 and police is down 3?
But I'd have to check. I think the cases that they were involved with fire, we're waiting on test results back on them. There was 3 of them that were involved in a pickup of a person that ended up testing positive. That's got to be.
Yeah.
They got to be about halfway through their quarantine, and the police issues were related to contacts outside of work. So I'm not sure where that fits, but.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Dan, is it possible that for the next meeting we get up some type of a workup of what this is going to, how much income the town's going to lose, just estimates?
Well, you know, so we're closing the first quarter, so shortly thereafter we'll get a report on the meals and sales tax. You know, real estate tax is not probably going to be significantly affected, but I think, you know, as time goes out, we'll know more. I just don't know how much more we're going to know in the next few weeks. You know what I mean?
Well, all we can do is, do we have records that would indicate how much meals tax and room tax we got last year at this time period for March and April, let's say?
A year-over-year comparison on that. I just don't know. We were off to a pretty good start in many areas, and it'll just, I'm sure as you get and close out the book on April and May, a definite notice here. The other issue, of course, is the golf situation that shouldn't escape anybody in that if the golf department can't open up and operate when the weather turns, we're going to be in some serious hardship there. So, yeah.
Anything else? I think this one is, I want to thank everybody for cooperation on a conference call. It's the first time we've done this. It gets a little awkward just yelling out the same names every time for votes, but you know, we accomplished what we set out to do in a couple hours for a lot of items that we had. We had a lot of stuff.
Next time we'll have
be on TV.
We'll have video.
Well, and if we're on video, hair and makeup starts at 5, so we'll take it from there. So, Jack, do you have anything to say?
I move we adjourn.
I
second.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, I'll accept that without a roll call. Thank you.
Good night.
See you.
Right.
Good night.